ghosts real? I'm Robert Joe, and you're about to find out.
Right now. I wouldn't go in there. Starts now.
My friend and I were sitting by a cave. I had goosebumps and I felt very cold. People say there are ghosts on Martin Land Bridge, and I think I saw one.
I love stories like this. Ghost stories.
A lot of torture places, a lot of people die there.
We heard a voice
About places we're not supposed to go. We're warned not to go. But I'm no ghost hunter. The fear, superstition, always hides a bigger story. A true story. What really happened here? And if you knew, would you still go there? Con Dao, Vietnam, a group of 16 islands in the South China Sea. A popular tourist destination known for its beaches and scenery. But some say this place is a haunted paradise. I'm Robert Joe, blogger and urban explorer. I don't believe in ghosts, but I do believe there are places that inspire an extraordinary number of ghost stories, and that those stories have their roots in something real, something that happened there in the past. Before 1975, you couldn't come here. Access to these islands was restricted. That this had been a forbidden zone made it an even more compelling mystery to me. One location was especially intriguing, an abandoned bridge deep in the Vietnamese jungle.
My job is to drive tourists around on a motorbike to go sightseeing. I have a friend called Tuan from the city. He asked me to go to Martin Land Bridge to drink and chat. There were stars in the sky with the moon. It was very beautiful. I saw it looked like a man with long hair, wearing white shirt and black trousers. He looked at our table and then went towards the cave. I had goosebumps and I felt very cold. People say there are ghosts on Martin Land Bridge, and I think I saw one.
Mr. Sun believed he saw a ghost at Ma Tin Lan Bridge. It was an experience so terrifying that he ran away. Was there something special about this bridge? On the main island, streets and buildings were reminders of French colonial rule. The French first conquered these islands in 1861, and it wasn't long before they controlled all of Vietnam. The infamous Haunted Bridge was built when the French were in charge. Maybe there was a connection.
Hey, I'm trying to get to Ma Tin Lan Bridge.
Ma Thiên Lãnh.
Yeah.
Cầu Ma cái gì?
Yeah, that one.
Trên này.
That way. Can we go?
Let's go.
Okay, all right.
Okay.
This is it? Come in.
The Ghost Bridge was strangely located. It was in the middle of the jungle, and it didn't seem to lead anywhere. It didn't even look like a bridge to me.
So I made it this far on this bridge, if you can even call it that. This is apparently where the first witness had his sighting. He saw a figure disappear up this bridge into this mountain, and this bridge just stops right here. It doesn't go anywhere. It just kind of follows up along. So there must be something in this mountain worth taking a look at.
Why was the bridge left unfinished? Was this sacred ground? Or the site of some awful tragedy? Then I saw the inscription. The bridge had been built by prisoners forced to work under horrible conditions. Hundreds died.
So apparently 356 prisoners died building this bridge due to the terrible conditions, starvation, as well as disease.
For the superstitious, the prisoners who died under such brutal conditions would have reason to haunt the area. Sun, the eyewitness, also said he saw the ghost head into the mountains. I wondered if the path led anywhere. Maybe there were clues up here as to why so many died trying to build the bridge.
Okay, I've been at this hike for quite a while now. The conditions are just terrible. It's rainy. This is pretty much just a mudslide I'm walking up. It's been hard, and all I have is this backpack. You can imagine the prisoners that were going up this mountain, probably on a road just like this one, if not this one itself. Some of them carrying heavy goods, materials for the build, who knows? It must have been that much more treacherous for them.
But the deeper I went, the more impossible the terrain became. The path didn't seem to go anywhere. The mountain held no answers. The bridge where Mr. Sun believed he saw a ghost was unfinished, but I uncovered the reason locals called it Ghost Bridge. Over 350 prisoners died in its construction. What I couldn't figure out was why the French forced them to build it at all. Local historian Miss Huang agreed to meet. She hinted that there was more to the Matinlan Bridge story, and that there was something I had to see for myself.
I heard as part of the hard labor that the prisoners were building a bridge. Why did they build that bridge?
The main reason why the French asked the prisoner to build Matinlan was to kill them slowly day by day.
Then she explained the French wanted to build watchtowers along the bridge to look out for escaping prisoners.
And how did the prisoners die?
Many reasons led to their deaths. Slave labor was harsh and they didn't have enough food. They were also not treated when they fell sick and were exhausted from overwork.
So who were the prisoners?
The first batch of prisoners were patriots in the anti-colonial movement, like those at Tonkin School.
Turns out many of the prisoners were part of a growing Vietnamese resistance movement, seeking freedom from French colonial rule.
How many prisons are here in Con Dao?
I think we should use that map, it is clearer. During the French colonial period, they have 4 prisons.
I was beginning to get the picture, and it wasn't pretty. Con Dao was not one prison, but many. It was a penal colony. This was where the French locked up common criminals and all who dared to oppose them. The French built 4 prisons over a period of nearly 100 years. Con Dao's remote location became a perfect setting. Escape was almost an impossibility. Forced labor, horrible living conditions. No wonder locals believe the ghosts of those who died here still lingered. I found a second paranormal witness who claimed to have encountered ghosts on at least 2 occasions. She ran a shop next to the oldest prison on the island.
One day, I saw a lady walking along the wall. I wonder why she was walking on the wall so early in the morning. I was scared because I thought I had seen a ghost. I didn't tell my son who she was to avoid scaring him. I said, "Please bless me, please don't scare me, and I will make cakes. If I have good health and sell many cakes, I will offer you some."
Mrs. Nam believed she saw a hungry spirit. She seemed convinced that the island, its past, conjured ghosts. And I was about to find out why.
First named by the Portuguese, Con Dao Island was formerly known as Polo Condore, which means Island of the Squashes. I wouldn't go in there. Stay tuned to the National Geographic Channel.
I came to Con Dao a group of islands off the coast of Vietnam to investigate rumored ghost sightings on an old abandoned bridge. The bridge had been built with the forced labor of prisoners. Hundreds of them died. But that was nothing compared to the thousands more locked up by the French around the island. Political prisoners suffered alongside common criminals. Many died of disease and starvation. A shopkeeper near the oldest prison said she had 2 paranormal encounters, and she believed they appeared for the same reason. The ghosts were starving. In her first encounter, she said a woman suddenly appeared to her, standing on top of a wall near the prison. On another occasion, she claimed the ghosts of 2 boys also harassed her for food.
Around midnight, I went to bed. I saw 2 boys who were shirtless and wore only black shorts. One grabbed my legs and the other pulled my hands. I thought to myself, they are ghosts. I searched for my walking stick to hit him. I hit the boy on the head, so he let me go. Then he said,
"Bà phải hứa là bà cho tôi ăn kẹo."
The spirits used to live here before I came in 1978. Many people and soldiers lost their lives here. So there must be some ghosts here.
So I think this is the neighborhood where the second haunting witness lives. This must be the shop owned by the second witness. This was where she had her sighting of 2 children who asked her for food or candy or cake or something and then just disappeared. And this shop is right across from the prison, which must be that right there. Let's see if there's a way inside. Here's an open door. This is obviously some sort of a shrine. There's a whole lot of creepy looking figures. The prisoners who are here. Oh God, the room's full of them. Just an endless stream of these little figures. Really, really gone. It looks like Holocaust figures almost. Looks like almost 100 people in here. That would explain why these rooms are so large. And they're all chained up. There's some sort of strange iron bar that everyone's shackled to.
The bleak conditions of the prison were more horrific in the day. It's now a museum depicting the horrors of incarceration.
Looking around this prison filled with hundreds of people chained together in dank conditions, some of them locked up for years at a time in solitude, you gotta wonder what these people did to get sent here. And if the witnesses' stories of literally hungry spirits coming to her are true, then you don't have to look much further than here.
Kondao's prisons were the source of many of its haunting stories. My exploration proved this place had been hell on earth for those imprisoned. Many suffered from disease and starvation. I went to find someone who could help explain why people believed the souls of the dead still lingered here.
So, according to Vietnamese spiritual beliefs, what happens to people after they die?
According to my knowledge of Buddhism, if somebody died of hunger, his soul would always be hungry. If someone died with a full stomach, his soul would feel contented. If they were tortured before they died, their souls would remain unhappy. The spirits would feel the pain and it would last until now. The prisoners on Con Dao were killed unjustly for no reason. Only those who have spiritual powers can conduct special worships to help them reincarnate. Soldiers who died on Con Dao, they were victims of injustice, so they could not be reincarnated. Vietnamese believe the souls of these soldiers are still wandering in this place.
The horror stories of Con Dao's fallen soldiers still resonated with the people here. Many believed their captive souls continued to suffer in the afterlife. The past was still haunting Con Dao. It had been brutal. The French wanted these prisons to serve as the strongest of deterrents. But the resistance grew stronger. In 1946, it escalated into the First Indochina War. No one knows how many died, but the estimates were in the hundreds of thousands. The conflict had been a long time coming. No matter how many they imprisoned on Con Dao, the French couldn't turn back the tide. I met historian Mrs. Vun, who knew all about the prisoners locked up here during French rule.
So the prisoners who were sent to Con Dao, what kind of crimes did they commit?
There were maybe civilians or soldiers committing crimes like theft, robbery, murder, and they were sentenced to 1 to 10 years in prison. The sentence given to political prisoners might vary from 5 to 10 years. 15 years or penal servitude for life. The maximum sentence was death penalty.
And then who would be sentenced to death?
During French colonialism, only male prisoners were executed. However, Vo Chi Sao was the first and the only female political prisoner whom the French executed here.
Vo Chi Sao, it turns out, was a revered heroine of the Vietnamese struggle for independence. She was just 15 when she tried to assassinate a French official by throwing a hand grenade. When the grenade failed to explode, she was captured and thrown in prison. 4 years later, the French transferred her to Con Dao, where she was executed by firing squad. She was only 19.
Imagine you're 19 years old and your last night on Earth is spent in this cell here. That's exactly what happened to Vo Thi Sao. Now, obviously, she was some sort of a revolutionary figure, but at the end of the day, she was still a young girl facing her last hours the night before her execution in a small, dark room.
Vo Thi Sao, like many prisoners on this island, had died an untimely death.
I'm here at Hang Sung Cemetery, also known as the Martyr Cemetery, and behind me you can see a few scattered devotees at the gravesite of Vo Thi Sao. I've heard that people come from all over Vietnam to mill around her grave, especially near midnight, where they believe her spirit comes to visit.
People began arriving around midnight, and I wanted to find out why some of them made the journey.
I wanted to ask why you came here to pray today.
We come here and we hope that Sister Sao will bless us. As we fought during the same period as her. When she fought and sacrificed heroically here, we were fighting somewhere else. That's why we couldn't meet her. Today, we come here to visit, and we hope that she will bless us with good health and bring us a lot of luck on this trip.
It's very easy to see the appeal of the story of the spirit of Vo Thi Sao. People from all over the country have been coming to sort of worship and pray to her. Here is this young girl who died, who was executed really, for performing a very heroic act of defiance against a much larger occupying foreign force. It's no wonder she's become a symbol of independence here.
More than 2,000 graves here were those of prisoners who died during French rule. Then I discovered something else. There were hundreds more recent graves here, from long after the French left. These were graves from the 1960s and 70s, from the Vietnam War. The suffering here during the French period was only the tip of the iceberg. The Vietnam War would bring more horrors and more stories of hauntings.
This November, National Geographic Channel. Despite their hellish experience, 5 former prisoners of war from the Con Dao prison still remain on the island today. I Wouldn't Go In There continues now on the National Geographic Channel.
I'd come to Vietnam's Con Dao Islands to investigate rumored hauntings on an abandoned bridge. The bridge had been built with the forced labor of prisoners, hundreds of whom died. In the 1930s, they had been forced to construct it by Vietnam's French rulers. Over a period of nearly 100 years, the French had imprisoned thousands here. The First Indochina War, a full-scale Vietnamese rebellion, ended French colonial rule in 1954. But it wasn't the end. No sooner had the French left in defeat than a civil war erupted, dividing supporters of communist North Vietnam and the American-backed South Vietnam.
I need to know the truth about what happened to the prisoners here during the Vietnam War. And to do that, I got to go back into the island's past to find out what happened to the prisoners while they were alive.
I met a survivor who had been imprisoned here during the Vietnam War.
Thanks for meeting me.
Mr. Bui, a former Viet Cong platoon leader, said he had survived the worst conditions imaginable.
So how were you taken prisoner?
I joined the war during my youth to fight against American troops. I was then shot and arrested. I was sent to the tiger cage. The tiger cages were very hot. 6 people had to lie on the cement floor, which was about 4 square meters.
Mr. Bui wasn't just sent to any prison. He said something about a tiger cage, which sounded more ominous.
What were the conditions like and how did you deal with them?
There were 2 meals a day, 1 bowl of rice per meal. The toilet was a leaking bucket inside the room. We were allowed to dump it once a week. The bucket was broken and the conditions were very poor. It is true to call it hell on earth. As I was always hungry and starving, there were no vegetables in our meals. There was no place on earth as terrible as this.
What were these tiger cages Mr. Bui mentioned? The prison cells I had seen were grim, but these images looked worse. It looked like some kind of secret prison within a prison. I went to find them, but I had a bad feeling about why they were kept secret.
You can see this looks like a typical prison complex as I've started to see them in Vietnam. The familiar, sharp, sloping red roofs. It looks like a building of 3 or 4 complexes. This door, however, is locked.
I managed to search inside, but wherever these secret tiger cages were, they were well hidden. Then I got a new lead. Don Luce was a translator on a U.S. congressional fact-finding mission that discovered their hidden location in 1970. He had heard about the tiger cages from a former prisoner, and the prisoner drew him a map.
And why was it so difficult to find the tiger cages? Was there some secret entrance?
So you walk in the main gate, you turn right and go down in between these walls of the prison, and then you turn left, more walls on either side, and there's a little tiny door, very inconspicuous little tiny door, that according to the map that Loy had drawn for us was what we had to get into to see the cages. And Colonel Vey kept saying, that door is locked, you have to go around. But we knew that if we left, we would never find the tiger cages.
And what did you see at the tiger cages?
I mean, your first impression was this incredible heat, because over the cages, they had tin roofing, you know, and it's so hot there. People are down below, begging for water. All of the prisoners had sores. The smell was just overbearing.
Now, Don mentioned that this pathway here had been disguised to look like a garden, so all of this must have been vegetables, greenery, to make it look like a much more innocent place. This must be the actual entrance to the tiger cages. Okay, this looks to be some sort of an antechamber. This must be the main complex. You can see here just rows and rows of cells. So I think these might be one of these solariums that Don had mentioned. You look at these open-air cells where you'd be exposed to the heat and the sun beating down on you, like this guy here.
According to Don's map, the tiger cages were near the solariums.
So these are the tiger cages. You see the bars up at the top. Up there must be where the guards were apparently walking back and forth. This tiny cell. Right off the bat, you see these chains that have become quite familiar in Vietnamese prisons. I figured out at this point that each one of these usually was meant for one prisoner, one leg each.
The French had built the tiger cages in 1940 to hold their most defiant prisoners. Then, during the Vietnam War, the US-backed South Vietnamese used the cages to torture and kill thousands of their North Vietnamese enemies.
Okay, so this must be the path up to where the guards were walking. All of these people down here. Each of these are numbered. It goes up to 60 on this side, so I'm gonna guess 30 that way, 30 this way. 60 cages full of 7 people. I believe that's, what, 420 prisoners in this one hallway? If I did my math right. This line would have been thrown just through these bars onto the prisoners below, burning their skin.
The terrible conditions of the tiger cages were made public in July 1970, when Life magazine published the photographs taken by Senator Tom Harkin, who was on the congressional mission with Don Luce. The images shocked the world. So did the revelation that many of the prisoners were not even Viet Cong fighters, but students and Buddhists who had spoken out against the authoritarian South Vietnamese government. The tiger cages were eventually destroyed, but not before thousands had suffered and many had died in these tiny cells.
So this is what remains of one of the French tiger cages after the Americans destroyed it following world outrage in 1970. That's when they were discovered.
But something wasn't adding up. The cages I saw were destroyed by the Americans in 1970. But Mr. Bui said he was locked in a tiger cage until 1975. How could that be? Were there other tiger cages still hidden?
Dubbed Hell on Earth, the Con Dao prison had more than 200,000 prisoners, and 20,000 died due to the bad conditions. I wouldn't go in there. Stay tuned to the National Geographic Channel.
In my investigation of Con Dao's ghost stories, I discovered a long-time French penal colony. Many people here believe the ghosts of prisoners still haunted Con Dao as hungry lost souls. Then the Vietnam War brought horror to Con Dao like it had never seen. The prison population swelled and was often deprived of food and tortured. For believers in the supernatural, this brutal time inspired even more hungry ghosts in their imagination. Then I found the tiger cages. I contacted Stephen Toth, a historian, for more on their frightening history.
These are the 5-foot, Can you tell me more about the tiger cage?
I think the tiger cages are so well known and have such a fearsome reputation because they became powerful symbols of Vietnamese resistance in the face of what seemed to be the overwhelming military and industrial might of France and then subsequently the United States. The name tiger cage was a term that was coined not by the French but by the Vietnamese themselves, who saw themselves as caged tigers, as these beasts whose spirit could not be crushed.
First, the French had housed their political opponents in these tiger cages. Then the American-backed South used them to silence their enemies during the Vietnam War. The cages were so horrific that the Americans destroyed them when the world learned of their existence in 1970. But Mr. Boye told me he was in the tiger cages until 1975. Were there more hidden tiger cages? I tracked him down and asked him to show me his last prison cell.
When I spoke with Mr. Boye earlier, I hadn't realized that the tiger cages he stayed in were built by Americans after 1970. And this here?
The irony wasn't lost on me. Just as the Americans destroyed the infamous tiger cages, they built another prison to hold their Viet Cong enemies.
So which area is your cell?
This is area D, and CD is inside.
So this is it? This is your cell?
Yes, it is. There were 6 of us in here. There was no fan when we were sleeping at night. We made a fan using a piece of cotton paper. Each person would fan 1,000 times. And because there was no clock, we had to count 1,000 times until the sun rose.
So what's this?
This was a toilet for 6 people to use. It was broken like this. We would sit there, and the water leaked to the other 5 people laying down on the floor.
So you guys would all be lying down here, and one of
Everyone had scabies.
Mr. Boye told me that he never got a good night's sleep, and this was why.
If they did this in the room next to us, we would be affected as well.
The French colonialists had operated 4 prisons on Con Dao. By the height of the Vietnam War in 1970, there were 8. More than 9,000 were imprisoned on Con Dao. The only thing that kept them going was the belief that they would one day win the war.
That we today have concluded an agreement to end the war and bring peace with honor in Vietnam.
The Americans pulled out of Vietnam in 1973, but it would be another 2 years before the North defeated South Vietnam, unifying the country and bringing the conflict to an end. Prisoners were freed and families united. But the scars of war remained. Con Dao's prisons and its people's memories bore witness to the suffering and pain.
I'm sitting here on Pier 914, named after the 914 prisoners who died building it. It's just become part of the scenery now for what's become pretty much a sleepy fishing village, a resort town. That's what Condao is now, and it stands as a stark contrast to the bloody, violent struggle that all of the political prisoners who came to this island and ultimately died went through in their pursuit of liberation.
The true stories behind the hauntings on Condao revealed a bigger tragedy that engulfed all of Vietnam. Atrocities were committed on both sides during this horrific conflict, and reminders of that past lingered everywhere I turned. These were the real ghosts of war. To check out my blog and some exclusive extras, visit iwgit.com.
What's my next haunted location in Asia? Tune in next week to find out.
In the season finale of I Wouldn't Go In There,
I'd come to Diu, an island in western India, to investigate rumors that an old Portuguese fort was haunted.
This pile of rubble is blocking my path.
Her eyes had grown big, and her face had become scary and reddish.
I Wouldn't Go In There, season finale, next Friday night at 11 on the National Geographic Channel. Too brave and